The Ninth Floor, a horror story for the night. I started working at Beckman & Co. 2 weeks ago. It was a standard office job. Spreadsheets, emails, meetings that could have been emails. Nothing out of the ordinary. The pay was decent, and the office itself was modern and well maintained, aside from one peculiar detail that no one ever seemed to talk about. There was no ninth floor, or at least that's what everyone said. The building had 12 floors, but in the elevator, the buttons went from 8 straight to 10. I assumed it was just one of those superstitions, like skipping the 13th floor in hotels. Maybe it was bad luck, or maybe the company had some quirky tradition. I didn't think much of it at first. After all, I was new, and there were more important things to focus on, like learning the ropes and making a good impression. But then I saw it. It happened on a late evening when I was finishing up a report. The office was mostly empty, just the hum of computers and the occasional shuffle of the janitor down the hall. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, casting long shadows across the rows of cubicles. I packed up my things, feeling the weight of exhaustion settling in, and headed for the elevator. I stepped inside, staring blankly at my phone as the doors closed. The elevator began its descent, and I absent-mindedly glanced up at the panel of buttons. That's when I noticed something odd. The button for the ninth floor was lit up. I frowned. That wasn't possible. No one ever mentioned a ninth floor existing. I had never seen the button light up before, and I was sure it hadn't been pressed when I got in. My heart started to race as I stared at the glowing number. Before I could react, the elevator slowed to a stop. The doors slid open. What I saw made my blood run cold. A pitch-black hallway stretched out before me. No lights, no sound, just a yawning darkness that seemed to go on forever. The air that seeped into the elevator was ice cold, carrying a faint metallic scent, like rust or blood. I didn't move. I don't know why. Something about that darkness felt wrong. It wasn't just the absence of light. It was the way it seemed to pull at me, like it was alive. My instincts screamed at me to stay put, to not take a single step forward. The doors started to close, and then a footstep, just one, a soft, deliberate step from deep inside the darkness. It echoed faintly, as if the hallway was much larger than it should have been. My breath caught in my throat, and I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I slammed the closed door button so hard my thumb etched. The elevator hesitated just for a second before the doors shut, and I nearly collapsed with relief as the lift continued its descent. I didn't tell anyone who would believe me, but after that night, I started noticing things. Small, inexplicable things that made my skin crawl. Colleagues would sometimes pause mid-sentence, staring off like they were trying to remember something just out of reach. Papers went missing from my desk, only to reappear in the wrong order, with strange notes scribbled in handwriting I didn't recognize. One morning, I arrived at work to find my inbox had an unread email with no sender. The subject line read, "Hurry, where did you go?" There was nothing in the body, just an attachment. My hands trembled as I clicked on it. A grainy, low-resolution photo loaded slowly on the screen. It showed an office space, rows of cubicles, a single flickering light, and a shadow just barely visible in the corner. I recognized the layout immediately. It was our office, but it wasn't any floor I had ever seen. The cubicles were arranged differently, and the lighting was dim and uneven. The shadow in the corner seemed to shift as I stared at it, as if it were alive. I couldn't tear my eyes away, even as a sense of dread settled deep in my chest. I quit that same day. I never got my last paycheck. Since then, I've tried to put it all behind me. But sometimes, late at night, I'll wake up in a cold sweat, convinced I can hear that single, deliberate footstep echoing in the darkness. And I can't shake the feeling that whatever or whoever was on that ninth floor is still watching me. I've started seeing things again. Small things like papers out of place or unfamiliar handwriting on notes left on my desk at home. Last night, I found an email in my personal inbox. The subject line was the same. "Eerie, where did you go?" The empty desk, a horror story for the night. When I started at Langley and Hart, the first thing I noticed was the empty desk. It sat in the corner by the window, just out of the main cluster of cubicles. The chair was pushed in neatly, the monitor turned off, the surface of the desk pristine except for a single closed notebook. It looked like it was waiting for someone, like it had been abandoned mid-task, ready to be picked up again at any moment. No one ever sat there. At first, I thought someone was just out on vacation or sick leave. Maybe they'd be back soon, and the desk would come to life with the hum of productivity. But after a week, I started to wonder. The desk remained untouched, yet it didn't feel forgotten. It felt occupied, like it was holding space for someone or something that wasn't there. I asked my coworker Jenna about it one afternoon during a coffee break. "Oh, that desk," she said, her voice dropping slightly. She glanced over her shoulder as if checking to make sure no one else was listening. "Yeah, just don't sit there." That was all she said. No explanation, no elaboration. Just a warning delivered with a tight smile before she quickly changed the subject. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't help but notice little things. The chair would sometimes be pulled out slightly when I arrived in the morning, as if someone had been sitting there and had just gotten up. The notebook would be in a different spot, shifted a few inches to the left or right, as if someone had nudged it absent-mindedly. Once, I thought I saw the monitor flicker on for a split second, but when I looked again, it was dark. It was easy to brush these things off at first. Maybe the cleaning crew moved things around at night. Maybe I was just tired, my mind playing tricks on me. But then came the night I worked late. The office was nearly empty, the usual buzz of activity replaced by an eerie silence. I was focused on finishing a report, the glow of my computer screen the only light in the dim room. That's when I heard it. Soft, steady keystrokes. The sound was unmistakable. Someone typing. But it wasn't coming from my desk or from any of the nearby cubicles. It was coming from the empty desk. I turned my head slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. The monitor was off. The chair was empty. The desk looked exactly as it always did, except for the sound. The typing didn't stop. It was rhythmic, deliberate, as if someone were hard at work on something important. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. The typing paused for a moment, as if in response, and then continued. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. No answer. I took a step closer to the desk, my legs feeling like they were made of lead. The typing grew louder, more insistent. It was coming from right there, from the air, from the chair, from nothing. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my bag and bolted for the door, leaving my jacket behind in my haste. The next morning, I returned to the office, determined to put the incident behind me. But as I walked past the empty desk, something caught my eye. The notebook was open. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The notebook had always been closed before, its contents a mystery. Now, the first page was exposed, and a single line of text was scrawled across it in cramped, desperate handwriting. I never quit. The words sent a chill down my spine. I stared at them, my mind racing. Who had written that, and why? I didn't stick around to find out. I transferred departments the next week, citing personal reasons, when my boss asked why. But even now, months later, I can't shake the feeling that the empty desk is still waiting for someone to sit down, to open the notebook, to hear the typing again. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I can still hear it. The soft, steady sound of keystrokes echoing in the back of my mind. I never go back to that floor, but I wonder if the desk is still there, and if it's still waiting. After transferring departments, I tried to put the whole thing behind me. I told myself it was just stress, or maybe a prank by a coworker with a twisted sense of humor. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. A few weeks after my transfer, I ran into Jenna in the break room. She looked tired, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by a distant, almost haunted expression. "Hello," I said cautiously, pouring myself a cup of coffee. "How's everything going?" She hesitated, glancing around as if to make sure no one else was listening. "You transferred because of the desk, didn't you?" I nodded, not sure how much to say. Jenna sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I should have warned you better. That desk, it's not just empty, it's cursed. Cursed." I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded. "A few years ago, someone did sit there. His name was Daniel. He was a quiet guy, kept to himself, worked late almost every night. One day, he just disappeared. No one knows what happened to him. They searched the building, checked the security cameras. Nothing. It was like he vanished into thin air." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. And the desk? After he was gone, people started noticing things. The chair moving, the notebook opening on its own. Some people even claimed they saw him sitting there, typing away like nothing had happened. But when they looked closer, he'd be gone. I shivered, remembering the typing I had heard. What didn't anyone tell me? Jenna looked down at her coffee. "We don't talk about it. It's like if we ignore it, maybe it'll go away." But it never does. A few months later, I left Langley and Hart for a new job. But before I left, I decided to visit the old department one last time. I don't know why, maybe closure, or maybe just to prove to myself that it was all in my head. The office was quiet, the cubicles empty. The empty desk was still there, just as I remembered it. The chair was pushed in, the monitor off, the notebook closed. I stood there for a moment, staring at it. Part of me wanted to open the notebook, to see if there was anything new written inside, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. As I turned to leave, I heard it again, the typing, soft, steady keystrokes coming from the empty desk. I didn't look back. I walked out of the office and never returned. But sometimes, when I'm alone in the quiet of my own home, I hear it, the faint sound of typing, as if Daniel is still there, working late into the night, and I wonder if he'll ever stop. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It helps the darkness spread. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next nightmare. And remember, don't listen to the whispers in the dark.